everyone. I'm your host, Gus Gordon, and welcome to Original Broadway Cast on the Front Row Network. Today, I am joined by a very dear friend of mine from my days in Cincinnati and her days in Cincinnati, Diana Rogers. Diana, how are you?
I'm doing great, and it's so good to hear your voice again. It's been far too long.
It really has. Diana and I used to do community theater back in Cincinnati, Ohio. We were in, I think, 3 shows together, Diana. We were in Chicago with the Footlighters.
Mm-hmm.
We were in Little Abner at Cincinnati Music Theater. And then in 1776 at Northern Kentucky University's Summer Dinner Theater. You were Abigail Adams and I was Thomas Jefferson, and you were fabulous.
Well, you were wonderful. That is one of my favorite productions that I've ever been blessed to be in.
Now, you had kind of an interesting way that you got to Broadway. You didn't go the traditional route, did you?
No, I didn't. And hopefully that will inspire others. Originally, when I got out of high school, I went to CCM as a voice major. And then I left after 2 years, I got married, and I started my family and realized I really missed performing and actually started back doing community theater. And it was my love in community theater that inspired me to go and back and get more training. So I went to a small college up here, which hopefully will inspire others too. If you can't get into one of the Big 10, it doesn't mean that that's the end of your career. It just means that you have to take charge and do some things. And I went to a small school. It was called Northern Kentucky University, and you know it. And there I was able to double major as a performance major and as an education major. And at this time, when I went back to school, I was, well, obviously older than the other kids who were in school. And I had 2 children. And so I went back and I wanted to hone my skills. And it was while I was at Northern Kentucky University and under the mentoring of Jack Wan that I was really inspired to go and become professional. And I got my equity card at Flat Rock, North Carolina when I was a junior. And from there, I went to, was given a full scholarship at CCM, Conservatory of Music, as for my master's in dramatic performance.
Wow.
And it was while my first year, when I was at CCM, that they came through and auditioned for the tour of Les Mis, and I was cast. So I went, it was great. And I went out on tour for 2 years. And I took my kids with me, and my room service bills were astronomical. They learned real quick how to order. But
Right.
It was great to be able to take them with me. And then I came back after 2 years. I came home to be with my kids, and it was very strange. Well, I was here. You went to Indian Hill High School, right?
I did, yeah.
Okay, well, when I came back during those 2 years, I finished my master's degree, and then I promised my family I'd stay close to home, so I took a teaching job at Indian Hill High School as the drama teacher. And
No
on the
way.
final
I didn't
night,
know that.
Yes, and on the final night of our production of Me and My Girl, it was a Saturday night at 5:00, and I won't forget it, and I got a phone call from New York asking if I could be there Monday to take over the role as Madame Thénardier on Broadway. And of course I said, I can be there tomorrow. And they were like, no, Monday's fine. And so that's how I ended up going to Broadway. I didn't even have to audition.
That's a lot to unpack. So I want to go back in time a little bit and start in that journey and get some more details. So when you went back to Northern Kentucky University, was it your goal to start working professionally?
You know, I wanted to do it, but I think there was a part of me at that point where I felt, and I look back now and I'm like, oh my gosh, would I go back and be that young again? I think I was 32, and I was like, oh, I'm too old. And so I went back, and that's why I kind of got a double major. because I was like, well, I really want to, this is my dream. I want to do it. And fortunately, I had instructors there who believed in me and who really urged me. And, for such a small college, it was Jack Wan really was the mentor under that program. And you worked with him. So you know how he could be. He would like beat you with a stick to go to the audition if you came in and you were like, he was like, well, such and such theater company is here today. Are you auditioning? And you're like, well, no, I wasn't going to. And he would just give you that eye, and then you'd go home and get ready and come back. But it was good that he did that, because, he really taught us how to prepare and to always be ready. And some other people that graduated from there were Angie Schwar, who was just recently in The Prom.
Oh my gosh.
If you saw the movie, Nicole Kidman plays Angie, and that is Angie. And she started in Northern Kentucky under Jack Wan. And then another one was Jenny Robertson. And she was there with me, and she decided to go into film instead of stage. And she did Bull Durham and a bunch of others. So, I can't encourage people enough, if you don't get into like the big school in your area, just because you're going to a smaller school, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get the training. It is what you make it. So you have to be your own cheerleader. You have to make sure that you're getting the voice lessons, that you're getting the dance lessons, that you're getting the acting lessons, that you are ready and prepared to go to these auditions. And so it just kind of happened when I was at NKU and I auditioned and the things came up. I started getting hired and suddenly realized that this dream really could be practical and I really could do it.
Right.
And that's kind of because, I was like, oh, how am I going to do it with my kids? And I do give, Jack credit for that, because he was like, if you want it, you're going to find a way. And he was right. I did.
Right.
And so it was great, and I don't regret it.
How did the other students react to you, and how did you react to them?
Well, when I first got there, I had just finished doing a forum on Showboat. And
and you were Gymnasia?
Yes. And so when I first came in, there was a lot of people who were like, oh, what is this old lady doing here? And thank God I really didn't look old then. Well, you worked with me. You can attest to that. So
you were a knockout.
Well, no, I don't know if I was a knockout, but anyway, I could hold my own. And so then slowly, I think there was a little resentment, and then they did accept me, because when I first came in, they were like, what's she doing here? And then I showed them that I was serious about it, and that changed. And the same thing happened when I went to CCM. Thank goodness it was a class entirely of older student. Like at 35, that's an older student. Oh my God. But anyway, when I think back now, but so it was, you had to prove yourself, and and then it was fine once they realized that I was serious.
Now, what kind of roles did you play when you were at Northern Kentucky University, and at CCM for that matter?
Well, when I was at Northern Kentucky, I did the Yes Festival my first year. And if you know that, that's all brand new plays.
Okay.
And so that was it was a great experience. It was fun to be the first person to create a role. And actually the playwright was really fun, because she had written this line for the character, and I asked her if I could change it. And she was like, okay. And it worked out really great, because if anybody knows, I've always loved Leonard Nimoy. And so she had this line where the character wanted to go out to LA and see Tom Selleck, Clint Eastwood, and then I added Leonard Nimoy, and it became a great punchline. But that was a great show to do. And then I did a couple other Yes festivals, and I think I did the Mikado there, and I did Chicago. So those were all wonderful. Yeah. And then when I was at CCM, I did The Visit with Richard Oberacker. He went on to compose. And Richard and I did 2 shows together. We did The Visit, and then we did Richard III. He did those, and then I also did House of Bernarda Alba, I think, when I was there. And then I did the one I really loved. I did Chef, and I played a role that's usually played by a man. I played Anderson, which really added a nice dimension to the show then when they're working with the Russians. But so there. And then, well, outside of that, professionally, I've done the original cast of Menopause the Musical, that wild and crazy thing. And then I've done a lot of Always Patsy Clines for the author Ted Swinley across the country, and then Les Mis, and just a ton of stuff. I've had a very fortunate, wonderful career.
Now, those people who are involved in community theater, how is collegiate theater different? And then the second part of that question is, how is professional theater different?
Okay. In collegiate theater, a lot of the times the roles that the students are given may not be something that they would do in the real world, because the professors want them to work on some attribute of their acting. And also in the collegiate world, you have a risk. If you don't do well, you can be kicked out. I don't know if you know that at CCM, if you fail 2 boards in a row, you're kicked out. It's hard to get in, and then it's hard to stay in.
When I went to CCM, you'd see 30 people come in with the freshman class, and maybe 4 or 5 of them would graduate as seniors, maybe.
No, you're right. It was treacherous. So I guess that was good preparing for the professional world. But the professional world, you are expected to do a job. You've trained for that job. And so there's no games. They expect you to do it. You're being paid, and you do it. Right. And the people are all very serious. There's no, which makes it different from a lot of the other things, but it's, you come in, you're expected to know your stuff, you learn your stuff, you do your stuff. And as long as you do what they want, you stay. But it doesn't mean just because you get hired, for example, in Les Mis, it was, there's several different kinds of contracts. The Jean Valjean and the Fontines and the Javers are not on a run of the show contract. Okay. So they're hired for X amount of months or something like that. And then they renew. And then when they renew up, they can get more money, or they're not renewed. And sometimes if they don't renew them, it's not because they're not good. It's because the producer doesn't want to give them a raise. Oh, yeah. So if they don't renew them that time, they can come back in, 6 months and hire them again. And then they can start off cheap again. But we had some instances. It was just, it's a business. For example, we had this one boy who had been told by the producer, you need to go get braces. And so he was like, if you want to play Marius, you have to get braces. So he went and got braces. But unfortunately, when he got the braces, it caused that sibilant S. Oh, no. When he talked. And he was demoted. He lost it. Oh, wow. He did because it's a business, and they're like, we can't have this. And so, it's that way, because it is very much a business. And community theater is kind of hit or miss, because most of the people, when I look back now, they just do it as a hobby, which there's nothing wrong with it, because of course, the word amateur comes from the word love, and it's that love of theater. Sometimes they just memorize their lines and they spit and chew. That's what I call. I memorize them and they spit them out. Some of them are there for the partying, and some of them are there because they really do love it, and they're really quite wonderful. So it's kind of a mishmash. I guess you might find that in any kind of, professional thing, people who do sports or whatever. Right. Well, there are 2 words in the phrase community theater. There's community, and then there's theater. And people's interest can lean more towards the community or the social aspect of it, or the theater aspect of it, of wanting to, try to build a resume or build a craft. But both are equally valid, and both bring a lot of rewards to them in their different forms. No, you're right. These people put in community theater. They put in a lot of hours, and they don't get paid. And they do it for the love, and they do it for, and there are people who are very, very serious, and they take it very serious. And I have just seen some wonderful performances in community theater, and I have seen some absolutely horrible performances in professional theater. And I'm
Yeah.
like, are you kidding me? You're paying that person? So it's just a mishmash. But I would say to anybody, don't give up on your dream. You remember, I think the lady's name was Feldman in Cincinnati, and she was in her late 70s, and she had always dreamed of going to Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
And she went to New York when she was in her 70s, and she got a coach, and she auditioned. And I think after a year, she actually got an off-Broadway show.
Really? Now, who was this? I don't remember this story.
I think it was Julian Feldman. You remember Julian Feldman? I think it was his wife.
Wow.
From Stagecrafters.
Okay.
Yeah, and then she turned it down because she just wanted to know if she could do it.
And she got her answer.
And she got it, and then she turned it down.
Oh, that's a riot.
She didn't want to do all the shows, but she wanted to do it. She wanted to know that she could do it. So I would say to anybody, if you're serious about this, and you're like, well, you don't have to go to college. I can't tell you how many people who don't. But you need to work on yourself. You need to get those voice lessons. You need to get, even if you're not the greatest dancer in the world, take up tap. I swear anybody can learn to tap. Even if you're on a walker, you could tap. I swear you could.
And you could be in the producers and use the walker to do the tap dance.
Go out and be in community theater and work on roles and go to workshops when they have them. And I know that sometimes the ACT conventions and those, they offer workshops. Go to them. Don't be afraid to go to an audition. What's the worst anybody is going to say is, thank you, we can't use you. And that's okay.
Right. We talked about CCM and their boards, which are performing exams, basically, when you get up in front of all your teachers and do scenes. I think it's important to say that several of those people who maybe didn't pass their boards have gone on to have really good careers.
They failed me on one of my boards.
And then you went and got Les Mis.
Right. Well, I knew they were going to fail me because we had this teacher, and she was fine. And but every day in class, I swear to God, every day she would say, "When I played Medea," and then she would go on.
I think I know who you're talking about.
You know exactly who I'm talking about. We're not going to say.
No, we're not going to say.
So anyway, it was my final board. They could fail me or not. It wasn't going to matter because I was going to graduate and I didn't care. So I decided to do for my monologue Medea because I wanted to say, when I played Medea. And so anyway, it was worth it. There was a collective gasp from all the students when I announced my piece. But, at that point, sometimes in life, you just got to take a risk and go for the fun. But, I would tell your listeners, if they're serious, find somebody who can help them. Right. Say, okay, what do I need to do? And know yourself. And that is a biggie. Know your type. You'll talk to people, I can play any role. Well, maybe, yeah. I mean, just like maybe I could play Annie if we were doing a geriatric version or something. But know yourself. Know what your strengths are. Work on your weaknesses, and just be ready and willing to accept, and know where the auditions are. And you're close enough to Chicago that you have a ton of auditions up there.
Oh gosh, yeah. Now, let me ask, this is something that's kind of come to my attention as I get older. Is there ageism in theater? Here's why I say that. I was noticing in the bios for a recent tour of a classic musical that parts that would traditionally be played by people in their 50s and 60s were played by people in their 30s. This was a non-equity tour, but is it harder for actors of a certain age to get cast as frequently?
I would say maybe in some theater company, and that is going to be because of the pay. A younger person will work cheaper. And depending on what the rest of the cast looks like. Most of the time, if somebody is 50, especially a man, if you are 50 and older, you can write your own ticket. This past year, I can't tell you how many theater companies were doing White Christmas And we were anybody who was in the theater business was getting emails and text messages from friends. Hey, such and such theater is desperate for a General Waverly. Well, General Waverly's, over 50. And they couldn't find them because a lot of them are still working, or a lot of them have retired, and they don't want to go out and leave the family and stuff like that. So I would say it depends on the company. A non-equity tour is not going to usually have more older people.
Right.
They're going to have a bunch of younger people, and that is because the younger people are willing to work for less and willing to work harder in those circumstances, because some of those tours, especially the bus and truck, they are grueling. Thank God I've never had to do one, but the non-equity bus and truck, they you drive, you do a show, you get in the bus, you stay on the bus overnight, you unload, go do a show, and then go to your hotel. It's really grueling.
Yeah.
But I would not be detoured. Get out there and get your name known. Seriously, if you're 50 and older and you're considering, or even if you're 65, you're like, okay, well, I'm ready, because they can't find them, especially like the Christmas shows. People want to stay home with their families. They don't want to leave for 6 to 8 weeks and go someplace else and not be home for the holidays.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you are older, get out there, get your name known, so that next time somebody calls me, I can say, wait, Dutch Gordon told me somebody, and I know we can find this person for you.
Let me ask you about Les Mis, obviously, because that's a biggie in your career. Tell me about the audition process for the tour, and then I'd love to hear about your tour experiences.
Okay. Well, when they announced they were going to, this is kind of funny, but when they announced they were going to have the audition at CCM, I was like, oh, I'm not going to go. I'm too old. That would really, I'm serious. I mean, here I'm 35, right? I'm like, I'm too old. They only want the young people. And my friends and Terry LeBolt literally kind of shoved me into the audition room because I wasn't going to go. And I'd worked up all night. I was like, what do you sing? What do you sing for Les Mis? I don't know, So I had prepared Every Day a Little Death from Night Music.
Sure.
And I go in, and the producer was there, and he said, actually it was the director, Richard J. Alexander. And he said, what are you going to sing for me? I said, Every Day a Little Death. He goes, I hate that song. I said, okay. And I had my book with me, which is the most valuable tool you can have if you are an actor. I had a book, and it had 30 songs in it. And I handed him my book, and I said, pick one. And he goes, you know all these? Honestly, I didn't know them all, and I was praying to God he wouldn't pick something I wasn't really good with. And I said, yes. And he goes, And he goes, okay, make me laugh. So I picked a song that you would have never thought to audition for Les Mis. I picked a song from the musical Over Here. Do you know that show?
Yes, I do.
It's okay.
The Andrews Sisters.
Exactly. And I picked the Marlene Dietrich song, Wait for Me, Marlena, which is certainly not anything you would have imagined anybody singing for Les Mis. And I did it in a character voice, which was not exactly attractive, but it made them laugh, which is what they wanted. They wanted to know if I could make them laugh. And then he said, all right, now sing a song to make me cry. And I sang Boy with the Bugle from Mame.
Great
and
choice.
He gave me two free tickets to see the show. Well, I went to see the show, and I kept looking on stage for a woman that would be 6 feet tall like me. And there was none, except for this one ensemble lady. And I was like, oh, well, that must be the lady. Because at that time, Madame Thénardier was being played by Jennifer Butt, who was 5'4".
Okay.
And he wanted to get back to the book. In the book, Madame Thénardier is a very tall woman. He wanted to go back. He wanted to go with the book and but I didn't know that at the time.
Right.
And so anyway, when Jennifer put in her notice for leaving, and that's when they called me. And I ended up going out on Labor Day and joining them in Denver. And then I played, I opened in Iowa, and it was kind of a fun experience because they had to alter the dress, and they only had 2 days to alter all of my costumes.
Oh my God.
And Jennifer, yeah, because she was wearing them. So Sunday night, they packed up all the costumes from Denver, and we opened at the University of Iowa. And so when we got there on Tuesday, they were still altering all the dresses, trying to make them longer, taking them in, because she was very barrely. She was short and barrely. And so they were trying to get all that fixed. And I actually ended up, and the shoes were size 7.5, and I wear a 10. And they hurt.
I bet. They literally squeezed you into her shoes.
Yeah, we had nothing else. They ordered some, but they weren't going to be in yet for another week or so.
Oh my gosh.
So I just sucked it up and did it. But I had to go on my opening night, safety pinned into my ball gown.
Now say that again.
But it was
say
great.
that again.
I was safety pinned into that $20,000 ball gown.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, but I met so many wonderful people and worked with so many talented people, both on the tour and on Broadway. It was a really, it was an amazing, amazing, amazing experience.
Now, with a show like that, when you have very little rehearsal and you had never had an experience like that before, was it intimidating, or did you feel, I got this?
It was. No, it was in the beginning, because the show goes on. And what happens is you shadow. So I shadowed Jennifer, who was the girl that was playing Madame Thénardier. I shadowed her. Actually, it was Linda Kearns, and Jennifer was on Broadway. Sorry about that. But they were both really short, and that's the way they played it at first. But I shadowed Linda for a week. I stood backstage and took notes when she went on, where she went. And then I had 2 or 3 music rehearsals of about an hour. And because you not only play your role, if you've seen the show, you play a ton of other parts. So you are in the ensemble, and you have to learn all the chorus parts and that. And so, like at the top of the show, we're out there, we're pea pickers, and then we become the workers in the factory, and then I became the bishop's sister, and then I became Madame Thénardier. Play all these other roles first, so you have to learn all those parts before you get into your own part. But no, I had to follow along and write little notes and that. And then the thing was we have a dress rehearsal. Well, nobody is wearing makeup. And let me tell you, all of a sudden, when they come out with their wigs and everything, they don't even look like the same people. So suddenly you're on stage and you're like, oh my gosh, who are these people? I don't remember where that person came from. And so it was intimidating, but the company was so great. And my partner, Paul Ainsley, who had played the original King Herod on Broadway, he was just so wonderful and really took me under his wing and made sure I was in the right place at the right time, especially for Thénardier. But they were wonderful.
Now, you had your kids with you while you were touring. That must have made you have even a more interesting experience. And certainly you were probably one of the only ones in the cast with your kids with you, I would guess.
I was the first woman with children hired on a tour. And they would be in school, and I would fly them out. They would come out during Thanksgiving and Christmas, the entire summer. Anytime there was a holiday, they were out with me. So they were going back and forth.
Okay.
And it was, remember, this is before cell phones. And so the rule was you were supposed to stay. And thank God, because there are other children in the show, Cosette and Gavroche,
right,
and Eponine, the little ones. All right. So there were 4 other parents, and they would help tremendously to keep an eye on my kids while I was on stage. But the rule for my children, they were supposed to stay in your room. Well, of course, children don't behave. And so I know I would get off stage and I would get down to the payphone and it would ring, and it would ring, and it would ring. And I'd have all these thoughts running in my head about what happened. And then I'd get home after the show, and they were like, "Oh, we were down the hall playing hide and seek." I'm like, "I'm going to kill you. I'm just going to kill you." So, but it was a wonderful experience for them. They got to go everywhere, down to Mexico, you know, the whole bit, everywhere in the United States. So it was a wonderful learning experience for them, and it was great.
Well, I remember when you were in the tour, you actually played in Springfield at Sangamon Auditorium, and my wife Claire and I had the chance to see you in that. And I was so proud of you. I was proud to have known you and worked with you. And I just thought it was the coolest thing that a fellow community theater performer was touring in the hit show of the time. I
was lucky. I really was. I was blessed, and I loved every minute of it. I really have. And it just opened so many doors for me. And like I said, I worked with so many great people, and it was an experience I wouldn't trade for the world. It was great. And that's why I encourage people. I'm like, okay, so maybe you didn't go to University of Michigan or Carnegie Mellon or CCM. Don't give up on your dream. You know, find out what you have to do to make it work. And if you want it bad enough, you can make it. You'll make it.
Les Mis was probably, in my recollection, one of the first musicals where it didn't really depend on Colm Wilkinson to continue. The people could go in and out as long as they were competent performers and not be interchangeable, because they all bring their own unique thing. But there was a lot of turnover in the cast, I would imagine.
You're right. And it was almost, sometimes people would call it cookie cutter, because, you know, this is what they wanted and they got the right type and everything. But it did change, especially on Broadway. People was like Dorothy's line, "Woo, people come and go so quickly here," especially in the leads, because they were always trying to get people in the seats. So we had people from that you would never. We had a girl from a soap opera, Catherine Hickman, yeah, and they brought her in to play Fantine one time, and she was there for a couple of weeks. Andrew McCardle, oh my God, I adore her. She is so funny, the sweetest, most wonderful person in the world. If you ever get a chance, always support her, and she's just great.
I've actually brought her here to Springfield to headline our gala. She was delightful.
She is totally delightful. I love her. She made us laugh the whole time. And they brought in Melba Moore on Broadway as Fantine, and just so many people. Michael Xavier, Robert. I never can pronounce his name. He played Jekyll and Hyde. Anyway, I never can pronounce his last name.
Oh, Robert Cuccioli or
Cuccioli, thank you. I never can get his last name. He is so funny. He shared with me, he would get letters from these ladies who would come and see Les Mis. And I don't know if I can say this, but I'll put it down. They would write him letters saying what they would like, you know, because he carried that big club that he hit people with.
Oh my gosh.
So they would write him letters and tell him about their fantasies. And I'm like, oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah. He goes, I said, gee, I don't ever get any of those kind of letters. But he was great. He was so funny.
Diana, tell me about your opening night on Broadway. That must have been an amazing experience.
Terrified. I was opening that night, and so was a young boy. And he was 12 years old, and he was going on as Gavroche. And his whole family was in the audience. And he was back, and I was nervous. This was Broadway. And I was like so honored and so petrified, even though, I mean, it had been 2 years since I'd done the show. And, you know, they called me in, and I only had like one day. And I was like, okay, I can remember all this. I kept all my notes, and I was like, I can do this. I can do this. And so anyway, the young boy, we're ready to go on. And minutes before he goes on, he has a panic attack. And he can't do it. And they have to bring the other Gavroche on.
Oh.
And I felt so bad. His whole family's in the audience, and then he doesn't go on. And so then I'm like, no, I'm doing this. So I got on, and I did it. And the only thing was, you know, in the beginning we played the pea pickers and that.
Right.
Nobody told me they moved the exit. And so where I normally went to exit, there was this giant, like, wall, like a ballast or whatever, and I literally like smacked right into this thing, and then I had to kind of like crawl around the side to get back on stage.
Oh no!
I was like, nobody told me they put the wall there, but it was frightening, and it was wonderful, and it was, it was great, and to see your picture outside the theater, 3 feet tall, you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I loved it. It was great.
I think most people who would see a Broadway show would be shocked to learn how quickly some of the replacements go in and with how little rehearsal many of them have. Oh, yeah. And that's a perfect example.
It is. It's boom, 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 because time is money. And they want to get a regular in they don't want, you open up your program and 10 flyers, so-and-so will be played by so-and-so will be played by, and they don't want that. So they want to try to keep that going, keep the regular cast intact.
Now, how long did you stay on Broadway?
It was like, I was there 94 through almost 96.
Wow.
And to see the bad thing was you only get 1 day off a week, and I couldn't fly home. And so, there is a downside to it. I missed my daughter's performance when she was at NKU. I missed my son, who had one of the leads in Jesus Christ Superstar, and his senior year, and I couldn't be there. So that's kind of tough. And I was staying. Thank God I had a friend to stay with up in New York, because you make a lot more money on the road than you do in New York City. And so trying to balance your finances between New York and paying for a house back in Cincinnati too.
Yeah.
So that becomes a stretch.
Wait a sec. You're telling me that being on Broadway isn't as glamorous as we think it is?
No, it is not. I stayed with my friend. She had a studio apartment. It was up on East 82nd. It was 9 feet wide and 16 feet long.
Oh my gosh.
And that's what we lived in. When she pulled out the futon, there was no room for another bed. So what I had to do was I had to go to Kmart and buy one of those $40 roll out. You've seen those $40 roll out beds. They're like a little square that rolls out. It's about 6 inches off the floor. And that's what I slept on. If you backed into the bathroom, you might as well turn the shower on, because that was the only way you could get into the shower. It was that small. This was a tiny, tiny apartment.
What would you do when your family came to visit?
Well, my daughter could come once, but the other ones never got to come. My husband was always taking care of the horses and the dogs.
Okay.
So I felt bad that they never got to see me, because somebody had to man the fort.
Right.
So that was tough. But no, it's not as glamorous as you all think. I had many more ties and much more fun on the road, because when you're on the road, everybody's out there by themselves. So you become the family. When you're in New York, everybody's got their home, everybody's got their friends, everybody's got their life. So when the show goes down, boom, they're gone. They scatter. And on your days off, you all don't get together and do things, nothing like that. So as wonderful as the experience of being on Broadway is, I had more fun on the road. It was like a giant vacation.
That makes perfect sense.
It was, because you always get at least 1 day off, and so I had a lot more fun.
You were on a first class tour, so you didn't do one-nighters.
Oh God, no. Oh no. We did 8 shows a week, Tuesday through Saturday. So we had usually 2 shows on Wednesday and 2 shows on Sunday. Sometimes we had back-to-back 2 shows. 2 shows on Saturday, 2 shows on Sunday. And considering the show ran 3 hours and 20 minutes, those 2 shows were hard.
Right.
But, but it was, I got to see so much of America I would have never got to see. And I really loved that. But I enjoyed New York. But I didn't enjoy, the show came down, and because everybody else took off their hair, their wigs and their makeup and all that, I had to go out and curtain call with white face and my wig, which meant that I was the last person to leave the theater. And I usually didn't get out until 11:30. And so I lived up on East 82nd. So your choices are bus, cab, or subway. Well, I took the subway twice, and it was terrifying at that time of night, so I didn't take it again.
Right.
But the bus usually took me over an hour and a half to get home. And I took the cab, but not every night because it was too expensive.
Right.
So there's just some things that you have to deal with. But the restaurants in New York and everything else that you can see. And then I got free tickets to see so many shows in New York, because they would like do a preview night, and then our cast was invited. And I got to see a friend of mine is a producer in New York, and so he invited me to not only see but go to the cast party with oh my gosh, Patrick, the guy who played Captain Picard.
Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart. I got to see him in The Tempest, and then I got to go to the cast party. But I was told I wasn't allowed to go, and I wasn't allowed to ask him any Star Trek questions. So I waited till the end of the night, and I took the name card off the table because he was gone by then. Starstruck.
That's a nice souvenir. And you're a Trekker, aren't you?
Oh, big Leonard Nimoy, my hero. Yes, big Trekker.
Well, I am too. So we share that in common, as well as a love of theater. What were some of the most exceptional experiences you had while involved with Les Mis? Now, that could be a funny moment, just a moment where everything just hit just perfectly, or maybe an experience where it didn't hit perfectly.
That's one thing I love about live theater, because I can't tell you, I must have done 2,000 performances of Les Mis, and there was never one perfect performance. And that's because the audience, as you know, the audience is different every night. And when you're on tour, you sometimes have the conductor gets a night off. And so we would have this other conductor come in, and we would never know what it was going to be. So we called it tempo du jour night whenever he was on, because it was either be really fast or really slow. Yeah. And he got old. Sometimes when he got nervous, it got really fast. And so you ended up going, at the end of the day, you're another day older. You're like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, slow down. That, and the fact that you have cast members calling out all the time. And that's not something that you normally, if you're doing a regional theater or if you're doing a smaller theater production, they don't always have understudies. And you have to kind of rely on the fact that you have to go on. Whereas when you're in a big show, you've got tons of understudies that can go on for you, so people aren't there. But I think one of the most intimidating nights was on Broadway. Twice it happened, and we didn't have enough. I feel sorry. If you can ever get a job as a swing, you will work forever, but you will work hard, because you have to know every single ensemble person's role in the show. And sometimes when they're out, you have to combine 2 and 3 characters and figure out how you're going to do that to make the show work. So hats off to swings. I mean, you saw in Music Man the understudies going on. Well, in Les Mis, it's crazy. Well, one night we did not have enough understudies. And the stage manager came up to me and goes, hey, Diana, you know the hair hag part, don't you? And I go, yeah, but I have to change for Thénardier. She goes, oh, you'll have plenty of time. So you just go ahead and do it. No, I never rehearsed it or anything. And so I'm like, okay. And the only thing I worried about is the dress is long and I have to walk backwards, and I'm like, and the turntable's going at that time. And I'm like, what if I trip and fall? I'll just lay there and spin and nobody will pick me up. But that didn't happen. And so that was kind of a scary moment. And then a couple of nights later, they came over and they were like, hey, Diana, you know, the other, I forget to get, there's the hair hag and then there's the locket lady. She goes, can you go do the locket? I'm like, yeah, okay, fine. So that was kind of like, okay, but I felt good that they had enough trust in me that no, I'd never rehearsed it, but I could do it. And so, and I think that's good when you kind of get that kind of a reputation, and that felt great.
When you think of a Broadway show and how complicated they are, to be put in a position just to walk on and do a part you've never done before, that blows my mind. Yeah,
that was scary. And one of the not funny, but they wanted to get in the new Thénardier when Paul left. They brought in another guy, and he was like, oh, I'm ready to go on in like 2 days. And I was like, no way, you know Thénardier in, but I'm not saying a word. So he gets on stage and he totally forgets all of his lines.
Oh.
And he looks at me and he goes, no, 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 no. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know your lines. That's not my job. And he just did the whole song on no, 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 no. And that was like, he got through it. But then we had another understudy who so excited that he was going on for Valjean that he was downstairs looking in the mirror at himself. and missed well, the orchestra doesn't stop. Nothing on that show stops. It just keeps going. So he missed his entrance with his scene with Eponine.
Oh.
When she comes in with the letter.
Yeah.
I have a letter for you to the devil in the rue de la. It's from boy. Okay. He wasn't there. And she had to stand out there and sing and ad-lib the whole scene because he didn't make it.
Oh my gosh.
And she was really mad.
I'm guessing he didn't play Valjean again.
Actually, he did one more time, and I'll give you his name when we get off the air, but I won't give you his name on the air. And then another time he gets on the air, and this time he forgets the words to Bring Him Home.
Oh.
And sings the whole thing on Bring Him Home, Bring Him Home, Bring Him Home, Bring Him Home. And we're all like, oh my gosh. And he's the only one on stage, so nobody can help him.
Right. Oh, that's the actor's nightmare.
It is. It's the wonder of live theater, which I absolutely adore.
Now, having that credit must have helped you propel on to other things. I'm guessing having a Broadway credit has given you some, great conversations, but also probably led you to some fun places. It
opened a lot of doors. It gives you a lot of credibility. So I've got to do a lot of other things. Like I said, one of those fun things I've done has been doing Always Patsy Cline for Ted Swindley, who wrote it. And I've done that all across the country. I played Patsy once, and that was enough. It was like almost wrecked my voice. And I was like, nope, not again. So I do Louise now, and it's been great. And, she's pretty much out there by herself for almost an hour and a half and has to talk to the audience. But I really love that. But no, it has been truly wonderful, and I really feel blessed from having to do Les Mis, and very fortunate. But I mean, it happens. There's stuff that happens every day. People don't give up on their dreams, and they get out there and they audition, and boom, they get in.
You've moved back to Cincinnati and back to your horses, but you still do some acting. What are you up to these days?
Well, when I first got back, I wasn't going to do anything because I was looking for a house, which, in this market's insane. But not only did I have to find a house, I had to find a barn because I have 4 horses. So it took forever. But when I first got back, I got a call from Ensemble Theater to do Elegies, which is a musical, as you know. I don't know if you know it or not. It's Elegies for Angels, Punks, and Raging Queens. And I was like, wait, I don't know that. And so we did that, and that ran for a couple of months. And then I did a show for my friend who wrote one down at Falcon Theater. She wrote a holiday show, and I was like, yeah, okay, fine. So we'll go down there and do it, Falcon, which is a professional theater. And then I got a call from Dave Atkins, who I had worked with every now and then. He runs La Comedia, and he asked me to come in and do White Christmas.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't want to do it during the holidays. And it was a long drive. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll open it, and I'll find somebody to replace me. And that's what I'm talking about. You have no idea how many people I called trying to get someone to take over the role of Martha. And I finally found someone, thank the Lord. But I was like really beginning to think I was going to get stuck doing all 74 shows during the holiday season.
Oh my
and not
gosh.
getting to enjoy my Christmas. But thank goodness I found that. So I've been kept pretty busy with that.
Great.
And then I'm not sure, there's some other stuff coming up, but right now I'm just like taking a chill.
Well, you've had an amazing career, and how fun to do Menopause the Musical. Boy, that's been a huge hit across the country.
It was, and we were the original cast, and so it was really wild. And we opened it down at the Quillo Center in West Palm Beach. And it was really interesting because when the lady did it, she was the first one to ever do like this parody type thing.
Right.
And so she just took all these songs, and I don't had a lot of them approved because when she got ready to take it off Broadway, she had to go back and change out a lot of songs because people said, no, you can't use that song.
Right.
Like the Beach Boys were like, nope, you can't use our song. You can't have any of the Beatles songs, all that stuff. But that was a fun experience. It's 26 songs, and all 4 women are on stage all the whole time. So with dancing and singing. So that was fun. It was a great experience. It was a lot of fun.
Have you done other productions of that since then?
No, I just did it down in Florida. I haven't done
Okay.
it up here or anyplace else.
Because
No,
you lived in
just,
Florida for quite some time, right?
Yeah, 22 years.
So that is
So,
quite some time.
Yeah, so I drove to West Palm Beach and then I came home and on my days off. So yeah, but it was great. It was fun.
How have you juggled family life with your career? You've mentioned having to be away quite a bit. I guess that's quite a lot of compromises that have to go into that.
Yes. Well, the first time when I used to work at theaters in the summer, instead of asking for extra money, I would ask for a space where I could bring my kids. And they were like, okay. And so they would usually find me housing, and then I could bring my children in. Sometimes they put my children in the productions, and like if we did Oliver or something like that, then they could go into productions. But then when I did the national tour, that was hard. I tried to come home at least every other week, fly in, so at least I could see them. And then I would fly them out with me. And so they would spend from May until September with me. And then they would come out at Christmas and all the other times I would bring them out. That was before cell phones where you had to pay by the minute when you called. So I had some hefty phone bills.
A lot of bills there. So you were probably using up a lot of your salary to fly back and forth and pay those phone bills.
I was a lot of my salary. The nice thing was, if you go out on tour, then they only give you a paycheck. They give you something called a per diem, which is to pay for your motels and your food. And I would usually partner up with somebody, and we would share a room, and that would like cut the room costs in half.
Right.
Which really helped.
And I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, in Springfield, I believe most of the cast stayed at one of the more expensive hotels, and you and your friend, you're saving your money. You were being really smart and not blowing it on, the fanciest hotels and the biggest dinners.
Yeah,
you were banking it.
We always tried to stay at the bargain basement. I called it the bargain basements. And they were usually fine. They were okay.
Sure.
They just didn't have all the bells and whistles. But, I'm like, I don't need that. I don't need a tanning bed. Oh, and that was another thing that was written in the contract, that you were not allowed to get a tan. And yet we had two of the boys take their week's vacation and go into the Caribbean. And they came back with a tan, and they were told they were not allowed to go on stage until it faded.
Oh my gosh.
So they lost a lot of money.
Apparently.
But they weren't kidding. They weren't kidding when they told them no. Yeah, I also got my nose broke on stage. I forgot to tell you that. Yeah.
How'd that happen?
We brought in the new boy, who I will talk to you after we hang up, because it's the same one who forgot his lyrics.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They brought in this new boy, and they were teasing him because he had worked at Opryland, and that was his only professional credit. And they were teasing him about not being a real actor and making choices, and which they shouldn't have done. But, boys are mean. And they were teasing him about doing Chippendale and all that stuff. And so in the middle of the Thénardier Inn, which is a highly choreographed piece because people are moving and coming and back and forth, he decides to jump on the table and start dancing right when I go over to pour the wine to this girl. And he brought his knee up into my nose and broke my nose.
Oh, my God.
Well, it didn't bleed. It just went cracked and went over to the side. And it was like hurting terribly. And I got off stage and I said, I think he just broke my nose. And they're like, oh, what do you want to do? I said, I have to go back on stage. I said, get me a bag of ice in 10 minutes. And that's all we could do. So then when I came back, when I left the tour, I had my nose fixed.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The show must go on, right?
Yeah. Well, stuff happens and people don't realize that in Aspects of Love. I'm trying to think the actress's name. Her foot got caught in where the turntable goes.
Yes.
Almost cut her ankle off. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, it can be very dangerous out there. You have to keep your wits about you. But nowadays they've changed it. There's no turntable or barricade. They use rear screen projections, which I kind of miss the bigness of the show.
It was a spectacle. It was just a fantastic show that everyone wanted to be a part of.
Yeah, it was great. It was a wonderful opportunity.
Well, Diana, thank you so much for spending so much time with us and sharing your story. You've always been such a gracious and talented person, and I've really loved getting the chance to speak with you again.
So great to connect with you. And I walked back down memory lane. I loved it. And I hope all your listeners realize what a wonderful opportunity they have, with your Performing Arts Center there and all the work that you do.
Well, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Original Broadway Cast on the Front Row Network. This is Gus Gordon saying, see you on stage next time.